I said, I can't legislate your heart,
Yeah.
but I can regulate your actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And even
Oh, man.
can you outlaw hate? I mean, really, like you can't outlaw hate.
It's an
You,
era of change, of ideals and cultures constantly colliding. We need brave people who will find the way of hope in the chaos, who will elevate truth in their speech and activate reform in their lives. Leigh Sloan welcomes you to this Brave
hey,
Nation.
Brave Nation, welcome back to Brave Nation. And we have part two of our conversation from last month with Mo Arnold or Maurice Arnold of Molosophy. That's his brand name. And last time we talked, things were very different. We actually had a different president at the time, and so much has changed in just a short amount of time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we are here back to talk about, we're going to start with talking about DEI. And if you don't know what that means, we didn't really define it last time. We assumed you knew. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. We might get into some other topics here. And so Mo, how's it been going for you?
Hey, it's been going good. It's been going really well. It's been going really well, actually. However, there's been a lot of conversation and around my space around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's like, Mo, how are you going to pivot with the changes? Because now it has suddenly been demonized. And
Hmm.
actually, from my standpoint, it had been polluted before the
For sure.
before the current president stepped in office. I saw this coming from from the days of its popularity when it became in vogue after George Floyd. I
Hmm.
began redemptive efforts from then because I saw that it wasn't sustainable the way
Yeah.
things were going because DEI in its realest sense is all about maximizing team talent within your organization regardless of race. That
Hmm.
includes white males and everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's about making things into a meritocracy and not going the opposite of what Dr. King talked about, judging
Sure.
people by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character.
Yeah. And before we got on, we were just kind of batting this idea around, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came it was DEI really founded in critical race theory and all those concepts, or was it really founded in the ideas from Martin Luther King and how, we just not being racist, and that type of stuff. And so you were contending that, you felt like the origin of it is good, right?
Right? Yes.
That it's not the critical race theory, it's not some of those problematic ideas that crept in there.
Right, exactly. I've always felt that DEI was good, but then when you let other elements get in there, and from a kingdom of God perspective, the word of God says that righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. Mercy and truth proceeds from him. And so whenever you have an aspect of only justice without righteousness, the foundation is going to be off.
And honestly, I mean, I think that even if you like the words diversity, equity, inclusion, the acronym DEI, even if that came later, and whether it was birthed from, a weird, funky place or a good place, like either to me, either way, we're trying to find redemptive qualities in things. And so, you're there in California where DEI was actually mandated, wasn't it?
Right. DEI was mandated and it was what it was one of those things that was really at one point it was really in vogue and actually California is still a stickler for it.
Hmm.
But I remember sitting in training meetings with individuals telling me, Maurice, I mean, you're a black man, and I know it's hard for you to deal with all the oppression. And I'm like, I'm sitting now because I'm in that meeting and I'm learning some things about some systems that were in the area. I didn't say anything because it wasn't my time to really speak. If it was just on a platform or something neutral, or if I'm talking to them out and about, the conversation would have been a lot different. But when I was hearing this, honestly, I was irritated because I'm like, my grandparents grew up in the Great Depression. And if you want to talk about like some oppression and people getting hung and that type of stuff, I mean, it was absolutely horrible. I'm from Atlanta.
Right.
And so when people start talking about oppression, I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm not oppressed. No, I'm like, I'm not a type of person you could bully. I mean, I'm not that type of person.
Hmm.
And so when I would hear that about oppression and actually trying to actually get me to lay hold of the victim mentality.
Right. And that is what critical race theory, a lot of that is founded upon, right?
Right, exactly.
Mm.
It's trying to get people to lock into the victim mentality. And I remember I said something before, and I know it wasn't popular with the people that I said it to, but I was like, look, I said, don't concentrate. I said something along the lines of said, don't be so intentional about concentrating on systemic inequities. Focus on your own personal and cultural deficiencies,
Yeah.
because that's where the transformation is really going to happen. When
Hmm.
we focus on our own personal and cultural deficiencies, it doesn't say that we don't address whenever somebody is being racist or somebody is being discriminatory.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
we really focus on what we could do to actually level the playing field for ourselves. Because in all actuality, in your, like, let's say for instance, when people start talking about privilege and all of this, in your home, because you and Jake are wise individuals, you have the privilege of wisdom.
Hmm.
Wisdom is a separator from other families because your family functions in a level of biblical wisdom. It doesn't make you better. It's just what your parents groomed you all for.
Hmm.
And so when people start talking about, hey, we need to make everything equal, that is impossible.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because some parents seek wisdom, some parents seek knowledge, and some people are complacent.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you remember from my book, I talk about Thomas Sowell's idea of cosmic justice.
Yes.
You remember that? So this whole idea, I think that's a really key part of understanding, what you were really doing to me is cultural reconciliation. It's a focus on redeeming things and helping people get along, helping people access, their greatness and helping other people recognize those things so that we can be better as a society, right? And
Right. Exactly. And A, my charge is for anyone within any organization, within any sphere. My challenge to myself is to be the voice of reason. And so whenever I hear people talking about it may be one of my black brothers saying they discriminated against me because I was black. And I say, okay, then cool. Let's peel this back. And I start asking questions. And I'm like, hey, bro, you was late 14 out of 17 days.
right.
Like, look, you know what I'm saying? Trying to get them to pare that thing back. In some cases, it was racism. In
Mhm.
some cases, it was a lack of individual responsibility. So
Yeah.
whether you're a woman or whatever, there is a level of policing our own so that we can really get to truth, because when we police our own, we get the truth. When something is really unjust, we can really call it unjust
Yeah.
collectively,
Right.
and it'll have a level of credibility instead of just throwing things out there.
Right.
And so and so that could make you a little unpopular
Yeah.
when you don't toe the party line.
Yeah.
But I mean, but I sleep well at night.
So, like, how do you feel about what's happening with DEI, and the banning going on now?
Well, I feel like what Pete Hetzef said a little bit. Because I had people hit me up. They were like, "Hey Mo, You see this? Because they knew, like, when I was an instructor at the senior academy, I hosted the Tuskegee Airmen,
Right.
right? So they was like, Mo, they're talking about removing the Tuskegee Airmen from Air Force basic training and all of this stuff. And I was like, I didn't move quickly because I just know the nature of us as humans. I just know the way. I know people will go to extreme and this, that, and other. And Pete Hegseth made a comment. He said that was malicious compliance.
Which part was?
The part of them removing the Tuskegee Airmen from basic training, that
Oh,
was malicious compliance. That was meant to cause a stir. It
oh,
wasn't the intent
okay.
of what the administration meant.
Okay.
And so, with that being said, some things are malicious, some things people get out of line,
Right.
but I do believe that it is good because when the former Air Force chief of staff, when he had a down day in, I guess it was 2021, for racism, I'm like, brother, you 5 decades behind. Like, I'm like, that's way, but I'm like, not to say that it doesn't exist, but I was like, come on, man, that
So
is
so the banning and all of this, do you think that um that it's that some of it is helpful because of the negativity around DEI?
right. I think some of the banning, I wouldn't say that it's 100% helpful. I would say that I understand it, and it has a degree of use to it
Mhm.
because we, some of us as practitioners, we allow flies to get in the ointment. I make some outstanding lemonade.
Mhm.
My lemonade is world renowned.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, when people
I
come
love
over to that,
lemonade. I gotta have some of your lemonade.
they're like, Mo, did you make your lemonade? Did you make your peach strawberry lemonade?
Hmm.
But if I allow some flies to get into it, no
Hmm.
matter that, it doesn't matter the fact that my lemonade is organic and everything, but when I let flies, they're gonna dump it all out.
Right.
And so now with them banning, now we get the opportunity to make a real case. Because
Mhm.
when stewards of the culture were quiet and they allowed other
Right.
things to get put into
Right.
DEI that had nothing to do with DEI. Like, say, for instance, one of the things that there are three criteria for a protected class.
Okay.
Three. And so one of them is immutable characteristics.
Right.
Number two is economic oppression. And number three is a history of discrimination. We let individuals come into DEI without filling those three criteria.
Right.
And so then that polluted the well.
Mm. Okay.
And two, when you don't leverage DEI to make organizations better, absolutely better, when your thing is, like I said before, my mentor would say it's just about making heads count.
Hmm.
And so when you're not about putting people into the right place where they can come in and dominate and excel, and you just coming through and say, hey, I don't see this, and this in that place without knowing the history of the organization or how forward they've moved, how far they've come, then it causes things
Yeah.
to get shut down and thrown out.
Now, I mean, I don't know about you. I feel like DEI is the wording of it. We talk about language in my book a lot. The language we use matters and it's always shifting. Like it's a moving target, and I feel like the words are going to shift. And we talked about this in our last podcast too. It's because of the corruption of it. I feel like there might be some other language that help um keep the positive parts of it and leave the bad. We've had lots of bad ideas in our country in the past. We've had eugenics. We've had
Right.
I mean, and then you think about communism. and how we were fighting a war on communism. And then, but then we had this, McCarthyism come in and try to like weed everything out. And to me, I mean, I feel like we have to be careful on both sides of it to go to mandate so much. I
Right.
understand that, there have been things that have slipped through the cracks and that have been wrong, especially in our public schools. That's one thing I wanted to, get your opinions on was school choice and public schools and all that. But it's like we've been arm wrestling over all these different ideas. And sometimes we need to correct things pretty hardcore because they've been going down such a negative path
Yes.
for so long. But the correction, I'm just concerned. I don't want the correction to overcorrect and to cause people, when they're not ready for it, and to cause people to lash back and pendulum swing the other way, if that makes sense.
Right. No, no. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Yes, because the correction is pretty harsh, but because of the level of foolishness, like,
Right.
my kids can consider some of the corrections that I make pretty harsh, but I can't let them eat poison.
Yeah.
So I gotta come in. But the way I define diversity as a leadership discipline for building inclusive, mission-driven teams for operational excellence.
Hmm.
That's the way I define diversity. And so whenever I go in front of an audience and I release that definition, I said, now, do you see anything related to social justice in that piece? And they have to say no.
Hmm.
And then I go on to say there's the principle within philosophy of I squared, the responsibility of the individual and the institution. The institution is represented by those who have supervisory or positional authority within an organization. We understand what supervisory authority, somebody who supervises people, but positional authority is someone who may not supervise people, but you are the administrator for the CEO of the organization. Now, you may not be listed on the org chart as a mover and shaker, but within that organization, because of your proximity to power,
Hmm.
you have the ear of the CEO. And so you could actually steer policy. And so so that's the institution, and then the responsibility of the individual. The individual has a responsibility when it comes to DEI, is to it basically when it comes to diversity, it's to say, hey, you know what? I I need to get an opportunity. Like, I am more than qualified to step into this space. Why am I not getting this opportunity? Is this some feedback that I must receive?
Hmm.
Or some individuals come into a space and say, hey, you guys didn't you guys didn't cater to me. You guys knew I was different. You didn't cater to me. I'm like, brother, we got an operational mission going on. Like, it's my responsibility too to come in and say, hey, you know what? Hey, um, I'm from my perspective, these things go like this, and this, to actually present my input. Because if I see you being passive, it lets me know that you're not trying to step into leadership.
Hmm.
And so when I see somebody as an individual who's kind of like, you don't have to be loud, you don't have to be boisterous, but you could just come in and just lay out some salient points and say, hey, this is where I stand on this piece. And, hey, I think we need to include this, this, and this. And so it's the responsibility of the individual and the institution.
Yeah. I mean, you're just teaching basic leadership principles in my mind,
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but and so now with California, I guess pushing back on the pushback, right? For with DEI. You can kind of redeem this space, and you can be a voice of reason, and helping maybe both sides come together
Right.
about this in a
E-
reason.
e- exactly. Helping both, because there's some redemptive elements on both sides.
Hmm.
Both sides. If the one side that is coming real heavy handed on cutting everything out, saying, wait a minute, hold on, there is something wrong in this picture, where you got the majority of your organization, you got 80% black people, but at the top, you only they represent 5%.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a guy that's on quotas,
Yeah.
but I would question and say, hey, you do a good job recruiting, but you don't do a great job in developing.
Right.
Where's your pipeline to give people the opportunity? Now, I don't totally judge an organization because of what they don't have, because I have to take a closer look and see whether or not people want to pay the price to get there from
Mm-hmm.
the population that they got.
Yeah.
And that comes through surveys, like anonymous surveys, and just seeing what people really want to do. Because like the example I gave on the previous podcast, I'm from the inner city. I used to wake up to gunshots.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I joined the Air Force, or some of my friends that joined the Army, they were not going to be a part of a line unit. If you're not a part of the actual combat unit in the infantry that's getting shot at, you're not getting promoted as fast.
Right.
So was that a choice in today that, hey, man, they're just not promoting black people? No, some black brothers from the city is not getting in that line. So we got to exercise critical thinking without just demonizing. We
Right.
got to think through processes, and that really makes us credible.
Right. There's a major cultural reason why this is happening. So we don't want to just be colorblind necessarily, or culture blind, I should say, because
Right. Oh, I like that. I like that.
you can come from a culture, even white or black or whatever color, and still have those same issues, right? But
Exactly. But if
yeah,
you really pare it down and look closer, if you look outside of just race, if you look closer at social economics, like say for instance, we have this conversation about the court system. And they say, when people, my wife and I talk about this, and they said, look, the courts put a lot more black people in jail than white people, and we make up 12% of the population or 10% or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. I said, my question is, we're not comparing apples to apples because there's a social economic disparity
mm,
between the races when it comes to economics and connections. So is it really race, or because some of the black people that I know that got a lot of money, when their kids got in trouble, they didn't go to jail
right. Yeah.
because they had the economics and the connections. I
Hmm.
said, now where we can compare apples to apples is when you got school systems and you don't have lawyers involved,
Yeah.
and you got students paired against students. And in our area, there has been a lot more suspension of black students than other races.
Mm,
Now we got something to look at
mm,
because we don't really have a social economic disparity, not for real. In that case, because we don't have a lawyer representing those students.
mm.
It's just comparing infraction against infraction and
Yeah.
the way the administrations have handled it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess since you opened up the school topic, you know that I'm passionate about school choice, and we just got back from Juneau. We were actually over there talking about school choice. For the first time, I hadn't visited our capital because you can only get there by plane. So we went over there and had a little lunch and learn with legislators, and the governor signed the proclamation, and it was the same exact day that Trump actually uh, put down his executive order about school choice for
Wow.
military and other things. So, like, school choice is a huge thing in our country right now. And I feel like it has a lot to do with the direction our country is going to head, because education is where everybody gets their ideas, good, bad, and everything in
Right.
between. So, what do you think about that topic?
I think school choice is a beautiful thing because it puts the schools, for lack of a better term, it puts them at risk. Whenever you don't have whenever you don't have competition, there will be no adjustments because of accountability.
Right. And I
And
think, oh,
so
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so with that, when people got other options and they see that, uh-oh, we got to handle our business. The and what makes school choice a challenge though for public schools is that I understand what teachers have to deal with because I have I would go speak to schools about the 3 C's of transformative educators, right? And it was, man, it was good. But what I recognized too, and I saw this early on, I see a lot of parents, they complain about the school not teaching, but they don't send students ready to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They don't send students that are highly disciplined and ready to learn. They're like, I don't really have to worry about my children being disruptors because they know we don't play that. You're a force multiplier. You don't come in and distract in any means.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of parents, unfortunately, don't have that mentality.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, we send our kids to school and it's your job to teach them. No, you
Right.
send us a better product. You
Well,
send
yeah.
us a more disciplined child up in there. And
And if
at
they
the
don't,
same time, you got, go ahead.
if they don't feel like they have a choice in where they're sending them, either the parents or the kids, then it's gonna, to me, it's gonna breed more of that attitude of like
Right?
whatever kind
Right.
of.
And well, you know what? It's good to have the choice because the choice is beautiful. But let's just say when there was no choice, man, send your child like parents, man, back in my day, like my mom was not having it
Yeah.
as far as me being a disruptor in the
Yeah,
classroom.
absolutely.
And so what I'm saying is there are plenty of teachers that are just skating. And
Mhm.
there are many that are burned out because they're working hard. So they're trying to get through the curriculum and deal with disciplinary issues.
Yeah,
And that
totally.
can be pretty challenging. My question to you on the school choice side, you all don't deal with as many. I mean, they happen.
Yeah.
They're outliers instead of the norm.
Yeah. I mean, when you choose a place, I mean, you're a lot more invested in that choice. You know what I mean?
Okay, I
And
got you.
so I feel like it does change people's mindsets when they're given a choice, you know? I mean, we know this from poverty. I tell people this is it's such the opposite of what people think because, they're like, they feel like the public schools are going to suffer if you offer choice, because maybe everyone will exit or whatever. And that's just not, those are actually, it's not actually true that happens. It's
Okay.
actually, it's not the good kids, all the kids that are smart will leave or whatever. It's actually the kids that are struggling because it's not working for them, in some way.
Ah,
And so we get like, I have a small hybrid learning center, and we get all kinds. I mean, we get kids, here's a bell curve, right? We get kids on both sides of the bell curve that don't fit in the traditional structure. And so,
wow.
yeah, we get kids that nothing else is working for. And so, there may be some disciplinary things here and there, but they know that they're choosing this, and that makes a huge difference. And so,
Okay.
you think about, is school choice, a lot of people think, well, it's for the rich, it's for those who are going to choose something else. It's actually for those who can't choose.
Right, exactly.
It's for those
Because
who don't get a choice because rich kids get a choice anyway, right? So,
right, I'm like, that is, you know what? That is crazy because I know when we were stationed in Montgomery, a lot of the people with means they sent their kids to school and their tuition, and this was like in like 2009, but the 2010, their tuition was like 13 grand a year, for going to school in Montgomery. And so they were not concerned about the public schools because their kids weren't going there.
exactly, exactly.
And so I'm like, no, that is absolutely, that is crazy. No, I could fully understand that. Plus, too, it does put the schools at risk where if there were individuals, if there were administrators or whatever that were complacent,
Yeah, yeah.
they have to step up their
Well,
game.
and that's what we found in the data, and it's edchoice.org if you want to, if anybody listening wants to look up the data. But what they're finding is that in places where school choice is in place, the achievement level of people who don't choose anything different, who stay in the public schools, the achievement goes up for them too. And why? It's because of
Wow.
competition, right? It's because of healthy competition that they have to, everyone has to step up their game. And then you
You
get
know
better.
what? When I would ask administrators, I said, hey, what is the number one determinant in student success in school? And a lot of them would bring up, a lot of them would think no one, it would, man, if I had like, let me see, like when I had like, maybe had like 120 teachers in the audience, maybe five of them got it. I said, hey, what's the number one determinant? And they was like, parent teacher involvement. And they would mention, social economics. That's a negative. The number one thing in student success is teacher efficacy.
Hmm.
And teacher efficacy is the belief in the teacher that they could affect change in the student.
Okay.
And it was number one. And this came out of this wasn't like some random survey. This came from evaluating over 500 million students worldwide on a meta analysis.
Hmm.
So it was an analysis of other analysis.
Yeah.
And it was freaking ridiculous. 500 million students.
Wow.
And yeah, and so teacher efficacy, and really it was collective teacher efficacy. When
Okay.
a staff believes, when individual teachers and staffs believe that we could affect change and impact students.
Yeah.
And then then it kind of drew me into, wait a minute, that makes sense, because Jeffrey Canada up in Harlem, with the Harlem School Zone, where 96% of their graduates
Right.
from their schools in the middle of the ghetto
Yeah.
going to college
Right.
and crushing it.
Yeah.
And
And
it's because the teachers believe
yeah.
that they can, in the midst of broken homes.
Right. And I mean, here in Alaska, we have some of the highest funding in the nation. I think we're like maybe seventh from the top of funding in education. And we are like scraping the bottom of the barrel with our outcomes. So we're not, so you hear educators talking about how we need more money, we need more money, we need more. That's all it's about is we need more
Right.
money. Not we can do this with what we have. And here's how we can do this. Here's how we can turn things around. Like Mississippi was the lowest socioeconomic, the lowest everything, the lowest funding. I mean, but they actually succeeded in the
Oh,
past
for
couple.
real?
Yeah, you can look up some. I don't have the exact stats right here, but they've done amazing. They
Mississippi?
have. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
because Mississippi, Louisiana, where I'm from, Georgia, we was Alabama. It was like 46 through 50th. Like they would
Yep,
change place.
yep.
Wow. So Mississippi has,
They've really risen up, and I can't tell you the exact numbers right now, but yeah, you should look them up. There is a huge success story, and
right?
it's just about the mindset around it, you know, and it's
Right.
not
And,
about the
and
money.
right. And two, the way I view education is the precursor to innovation.
Hmm.
And so if you're an educator, I get irritated. Like when someone, like they tell me like this person got a doctorate degree and all this stuff, but I see that you're fearful and you're not an out of the box thinker. Like education's
Yeah,
supposed to expand you.
yeah.
And so my challenge too, because I know there are a lot of creative educators, and
Hmm.
then there are a lot of Pharisees within their spaces trying to
Yeah. Trying to keep them a lid on
trying to
them.
keep them bottled up. Like, hey, this is
Absolutely.
what the rules say.
Absolutely.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no, man, this thing isn't working.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I used to teach in the public schools, and I was so frustrated by it, and that was even not even as bad of an environment as I see other teachers in. I see teachers that they have to have a script, and they have to read an exact script, and they can't deviate from it at all. here in, I'm not saying all teachers in Alaska, but a lot of them, they're given a script, and I'm thinking that is breeding more mediocrity. A teacher can't
Yes.
make a decision on how they're going to teach. They can't, that's driving good teachers out of the system. So no wonder
Right.
they're finding these independent teachers that are doing things differently, through funding from charter schools or whatever. They're finding a way to do it differently, or they're just not teaching and they're getting into business or something else.
Right. Or what they do, they will actually, because of their actions, they will breed someone like a Leigh Sloan who steps outside of the system, builds something tremendous, and then they have to pay you consulting dollars.
Yeah.
No, seriously, when they could have had you in house, they could have leveraged your wisdom from the inside and seek to make change. Because one of the other studies that I took a look at was that from it was like 2021, and they were saying a lot of the jobs that kindergartners at that time, the kindergartners in 2021, by the time they graduate, they was like I was some number like 60% of the jobs that they would have haven't been created yet.
Right.
And so if you're living in a dynamic world, but you're functioning in a static manner,
Right.
you have a problem. When I
Right.
spoke to the educators in Atlanta, and I told my boy, I said, now they may not be ready for this, but I got something that I got a blueprint for something called asymmetric learning,
Mm.
where it knocks you off your pivot. Like you deal with the traditional learning, but asymmetric. Let me tell everybody what asymmetric is. Conventional and conventional warfare back in the day, a conventional warfare, you get tanks, and this one side got tanks, you got tanks, y'all got missiles, they got missiles. You guys come to this area and you just battle it out. Asymmetric is when they come to your area or you go to theirs, but you're hiding in the woods, you're up in
Yeah.
the trees. It's real stealth. It's
Right.
not something that they can see outrightly.
Right.
That's asymmetric. It's not something they can really plan for. And
Right.
what happens is we train people in strictly conventional manners,
Yeah.
in a conventional manner, and expect them to deal with asymmetric situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the asymmetric learning that I got, it's all about teaching kids how to take the fundamentals and how to think on the spot and how to make adjustments and how to pivot
Right.
at a moment's notice. And
Right.
so, and it was going to be like a whole curriculum dealing
Cool.
with asymmetric learning and really getting us to tapping into critical thinking.
Yeah. And when we're left to think of our own ideas and our own solutions for education, and we're not, mandated out of everything, and and have thick layers of bureaucracy over everything. We can actually be creative. We can actually solve problems. We have parents that are solving the educational crisis at home with their kids.
You're right.
There's so many ways we can do it.
Exactly. And I guess one of the other bigger problems is that statistics show that only 26% of the high school seniors in America are proficient in mathematics.
Hmm.
That is problemos. And part of it, and I'm not dumping on teachers, but part of it, I don't really put it on the teachers. I believe it's the way they're forced to actually teach it. Cause man, sometimes like the way it's taught is in the most abstract way that people can't relate to it. And
Well,
I'm
and
like,
that came down from the federal government. That
I
came down,
know.
and from states, some states along.
That's why it's possibly a good thing that the Department of Education is getting cut.
Mhm.
Because that type of foolishness that people cannot relate to. I mean, I despise that type of idiocy. When I was in the Air Force, and I know people won't like this, but I mean, I said it when I was there. We had a thing like first we went to weather observing school. So you learn how to observe the weather, you learn about the 27 states of the sky and all this other stuff. And then you go from there. So that school had a high washout rate. A lot of people failed that school. But
Okay.
the next school was the killer. It was one of the hardest schools in the military.
Mm.
And it was the forecasting school. We switched it. So it was a logical progression. It was algebra, calculus.
Okay.
So anybody can follow that. No, no, no. Some brain surgeon decided to switch it to make calculus first
Yikes.
and put the other school behind it.
Some politician.
Somebody,
Was it a politician that did that?
it had to be somebody trying to get office or
Yeah.
trying to save some money, trying to get some rank or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it was, but it burned me up because it didn't make any sense because because I found the product. Most of the people in there, I could forecast things that they couldn't because I thoroughly knew the states of the sky because I had a logical progression.
Yeah.
And I found like some of the young guns, they didn't know the 27 states of the sky. They didn't know that the weather that they're getting is associated with this state of the sky. So it didn't help them when it came to forecasting. They wasn't as sharp.
Yeah.
And because it was illogical. And so I was like, and that's how I related to school. Some of the stuff, the way it happens and the way it's mandated, is very illogical. It came from somebody said.
I mean, to me, I think about all the ideologies that come through the world and through our nation, and how, like I said before, we're like arm wrestling in the schools systems for which ideology is going to win out. When to me, it's a matter of freedom of speech and to pursue what we want to pursue. Like for so many, hundreds of years, actually, we've taken religion out of schools to
Right.
where then secular humanism is the dominant force and is the preferred thing because there's no way to talk about religion in a healthy way, right? Not and we shouldn't establish a religion, right? But we also shouldn't be anti
Right.
religion. Like I remember going to in my school in Los Angeles, and realizing for the very first time it wasn't okay to talk about God. That was never a right answer. And
Mm.
so I realized I had to keep that bottled in, and it wasn't okay that there was a discriminatory nature to that. And so, I feel like with school choice, we have to have some you know, I guess tolerance for people with different ideas, and
Right.
just be able to, maybe I know there was a school I sent my kid to online. They talked about teaching you how to think, not what to think, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, when we allow people to choose and we don't say it has to be this ideology or that ideology, it's really freedom of speech for every individual, and how much more democratic is that to let people choose what ideologies their kids are exposed to. And I know that's a big that's a big leap for some people because they're so used to, the secular humanist
Right.
assumptions that we've been making for hundreds of years.
Right. Exactly. And too, I think, and I know a lot of people would push back against this too. I think that when you do take God out of the equation, when you take light out of it, like if you look at the dark ages, there weren't many inventions. And it's because God was removed from that particular element. And so I would say, okay, if you're gonna say we got to take God out, I say, okay, cool. Um, my thing is that we must stand for a ground of truth, and the ground of truth are enduring principles, and the enduring principles only come from one prince. So you say, okay, okay, cool, but we're going to deal with these enduring principles because we must have a foundation, because people start saying your truth, my truth. I said, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, there's only one truth.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, we can't mandate that people think that God is the truth, but we can, like everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial, right?
Right.
Oh, and I mean, even the fact of racism, like You're not going to outlaw racism and have everything be perfect. You're not going to have cosmic justice. You're not going to have peace on earth and kumbaya just by saying that racism is illegal. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah.
Like
It's
it's never
yeah.
going to happen, you know? So so
Right.
it has to be permissible. I mean, sorry, it can't be it has to be permissible, but it's not beneficial. You know what I mean? And so our government has to permit some things that are not necessarily right because we can't be the thought police, or we don't want to be the thought police, you
well,
know?
right. I got and so that's where like we don't want to be the thought police, but honestly, and I'm talking about things that are enduring truth. Because see, that's how we got into the trouble where we are now when we're talking about there's 75 genders and all this other foolishness.
Mhm.
We have to we have to, there are some things that are irrefutable truth. Like
Mhm.
it's irrefutable.
Right.
And so we have to, wherever we know that it's proven and it's irrefutable, we
It's
have
scientific.
to stand
Yeah.
that ground and say, we're not going to propagate any make believe. If I had a friend coming into my car and they say, hey, bro, I know you taking me to get groceries, but you're gonna have to take 2 trips because my 3 little friends sit in the back seat and I don't want groceries getting on them. Brother, you better go rent an Uber that's big enough for your little friends because you're gonna have to leave your little friends. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna play in your make-believe world. We're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you like for, and as an example, I'm hearing that people, how they used to have all the pronouns listed, right? Now,
Right.
now they're saying you can't list pronouns, right?
Wow.
So isn't that interesting? Like to me, I guess I'm a little more of a libertarian in that, you know, like let them list their pronouns if they want to, but I don't, I don't
Right.
necessarily think there's a need for that, but you know, I think
Well,
that's a little bit of a freedom of speech thing. I don't know.
right. That again, that's possibly a freedom of speech, but the problem comes in is that when you start mandating that people have to call you by, like,
Right. That's true.
so that's the other end of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When
I'm saying
somebody
neither
is a
end should mandate it. That's what I'm thinking. Like why don't mandate that people call you something, and also don't mandate that you can't call yourself. You know what I mean?
right, right. So don't mandate that. Don't mandate, because when you get into the mandates, like I had my daughter got in trouble at work because somebody had got a gender change, and we believe in treating all people with dignity and respect. And
Absolutely.
she mistakenly called the
Misgendered.
person by their former name, or the name they
Oh,
were given
okay.
at birth. And she got in trouble. And I'm like, hey, man, I would have came, me personally, like if I was anywhere around that supervisor, I would have came from the top rope. Because I would have asked, hey, have you ever had somebody, because this foolishness. I'm like, you ever had somebody that got married and you called them by their maiden name? Like, man, this is ridiculous.
Right. And
Why are you trying to persecute
mean,
her because she made a
yeah.
mistake?
And
Because
this
she
is another point that I point out in my book was that if you don't believe in objective truth, then the only thing that exists is speech and language. And that is essentially truth. So in the mindset of people who don't anchor themselves to objective truth, you are actually doing violence by what you say. And to
right,
me, that's a scary thing because, you can't really have freedom of speech if you believe that speech is violence in and of itself.
right. It goes back to something I read where somebody said, those people who consider the truth hate speech are people who hate the truth.
Right. And even,
Oh man,
can you outlaw hate? I mean, really, like you can't outlaw hate. You can say you can't do these things to these people. That's illegal.
right, right,
You can't scrub hate from people's hearts.
right. And you can't force cultural nuances.
Yeah.
Only thing you could ask people said, hey man, we treat all people with dignity, honor, and respect, like regardless of what anybody is about. That's what we're about. We're about
But
like
you have to choose to want to treat people that way. You can't say that you have to treat people with dignity. I mean,
right,
that's within hearts of people, and that's what
right.
God does,
And leaders, I remember as when I was running with my Air Force units, I would say, look, I said I can't legislate your heart,
Yeah.
but I can regulate your actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm like, I'm not gonna make you do this, but I'm telling you, you will not do that. Like you will not treat that person bad because of their stance or what they believe in. That's not what we're about.
Yeah. And I think
Everybody
we,
gets
we
to
do
choose.
excuse a lot of behavior because we're not, that's the other team. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yeah, that's not okay.
No, but what you talk about too, language, like language is so very important that how we because if you look at a lot of the things that we're experiencing now, like Planned Parenthood
Mhm.
and just the way things reproductive health,
Yeah.
all these things are
Euphemisms, yes.
they're very clever.
Mhm.
They're very very clever.
Yeah.
And tonight I'll be connecting with my people on Partnership for Life, and we'll be setting up something to show like where we're coming from when it comes to providing solutions for women who decide not to have abortions
Right.
and helping them with prenatal care and with foster care and all of that, man, and getting a
Yeah.
collaboration between the church, the marketplace, governmental leaders, and legislators
Yeah.
all involved, man, like a full ensemble to say, hey, we're solutionaries and this is how we're gonna help you navigate this situation. And if you choose to go the other route, that's totally on you.
Mhm.
But these are the options we're giving you viable options.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother topic that we didn't even get to today.
Yeah.
Our time just flew by. But
I
yeah. What were you
I
thinking?
know, I know.
It
Well,
is,
Leigh,
yeah, there's so much. And what were you gonna say?
I know, man, and just circling back on the DEI piece before we get out of here. DEI, I'm telling you, California is still a DEI stronghold.
Yeah.
You can see by the fact that we're holding on to sanctuary cities. So
Yeah.
so DEI has the negative stigma still nationally, but in California, it's somewhat of a stronghold.
Sure.
But
So you're still gonna use it because that's the
yes,
language that resonates with your California people.
right. Well, I'm gonna use it because I know it's effective wherever I go. I know that it is effective. It's an effective way of maximizing team talent and establishing a meritocracy.
Well,
Because at the
the way you do it, it is.
right, the way, yeah, the way I do it, it is, and because at the end of the day, there's an article out by an Air Force Academy instructor named Christopher Miller, and he talks about operationalizing inclusion. A beautiful article. And basically, one thing that he pulls out said at the end of the day, because when we leverage DEI properly and it's fair across the board, the one product that we're trying to produce in any leadership situation is trust. When it's done and people are treated fairly across the board, they said, you know what? That is irrefutable. That's fair. People
Yeah.
begin to trust. And
Yeah.
so that's the end game that we're looking to get. We're
Yeah.
not necessarily just we're not looking to get butts into seats. We're looking to have trust seated within the heart of of the people for respectable leadership and respectable cultures and organizations.
And that's ultimately what I believe about all truth. I believe that's why I believe so strongly in freedom of speech, because I believe that truth is going to resonate, is going to endure the test of time. Real truth, right?
Right.
The truth
Yeah.
that you're bringing is going to endure because it has that quality to it. It's going to last.
Right. I know when I would speak at the Air Force Chief Leadership Academy, and they was like, Mo, these things being said about us that are untrue. I said, look, a lie doesn't have the weight bearing capacity to carry reality.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Good. That's good.
I said, it'll fall to the ground.
Yeah.
It'll fall to the ground. I said, we
Just
just stand in
wait a
truth.
little while longer. Yeah.
Right, right. I said, you just wait a little while longer.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that we can't that we can't be that we can't shift our language to match the culture because
Right,
we can miscommunicating the truth because we think, oh, it's just self-evident to everyone. It's not
right.
necessarily going to be self-evident unless we create language around it that resonates with our culture, and that's what we're trying.
Exactly. The problem is that because we want to shift our language, but we don't want to shift our principles in our operation.
Yeah,
Because if our operation and principles are spot on, we want to stay with that, but we want to switch to linguistics
right.
so that people don't paint us with a narrative that is a fault that is a false narrative.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. Thank you, Mo. And remember, your website is molosophy.com. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Molosophy.com, or you can catch me on LinkedIn at Maurice
Mhm.
Mo Arnold. And on LinkedIn, reach out to me and
Yeah.
look, I'm willing to come to organizations, whether virtual or in person,
Hmm.
and we could just have some conversation to see, whether what I bring to the table, whether or not it's relevant for your organization or what you actually need, because I want to be somewhere where I can help. More so beyond DEI, I'm an organizational architect and a cultural consultant. And
Yeah.
so, as an organizational architect, I work with teams on their vision, mission, and core values. And so together we develop something that will fit your culture, that'll stick.
Yeah. No
So
matter
that's the
who's
objective.
president, right? No matter who's president.
Right. No
What's
matter who's
happening?
the president.
Awesome. Well, it's good. It's great to have you, and I hope for more conversations and maybe to see you in our Brave Nation circle sometime. That would be
Yes.
super fun. We do Brave Nation Circle every month. I did this class called Passion and Purpose, and we did part one, we did part two. So we help people discover their purpose and then to start to walk it out. But then I realized in my class that we want to keep encouraging each other because this is an ongoing thing of, you
Yes.
know, pursuing what God put in your heart to do. So we just meet every month online and we have a portal where you can access like all kinds of different trainings that we've done over the past 4 or 5 years. So
Come on.
yeah, we're inviting you into that, Mo.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I already joined, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So next month.
I love the trademark on it, like your emblem and stuff. I said, man, that is crazy. Brave Nation, baby. Got
Yeah.
the life, got the blip like a heartbeat on it. I was like,
That was my sister. She's a great graphic designer.
oh my God, she is brilliant, man. That was brilliant.
Yeah. So anyway, would love to have you guys, and it was a great conversation. You can reach out to me at bravenation.online. See you next time.